I ask business leaders when I do trainings around building leaders and building leadership, what percentage of decision making depends on you? Anything above 10%, then you are still running the business
yourself.
In fact, 5%. Every single year, you should reduce the percentage of decision making as you grow the business. In the early stages, that's okay because you're building something. But at some point when the business is grown, if you're running a 10-year-old business, that still depends on you. Except, of course, the one-man business, then that's fine. If you're running a business that you intend to grow globally or even regionally or even interstate, you understand, you want to have a branch in Lagos, Calabar, you can't have 40%, 50%, 70% of the decision making. You need to decentralize that. And that becomes very, very important. You see organizations like Google, you see organizations like FedEx and all of that. They have decentralized leadership. Because what it does is that people are able to take decisions that matter for the country, for the region.
Welcome to the LIMBsimple podcast, where bold conversations meet real-life world impact. I am Melvis Inhezwanu. And today's episode is different. It's different because if you're listening right now, then chances are that you're a visionary, a leader building something bigger than themselves, a founder trying to lead with purpose, or a policy shaper who knows that this system must change but doesn't quite know exactly how to go about it. Today, we are sitting with someone who doesn't just talk about transformation, she lives it. Ini Abimbola. She's not just a name you whisper in passing. She's done 25 years as a powerhouse across management consulting, public policy, and sustainability with an impeccable ability for strategy creation and execution. Guess what? They call her Madam Fixer because when systems are broken and when teams are stuck, when policy needs to work, they call her to fix that. And at the heart of it, she's looking to shift Africa towards ESG and sustainable development. So whether you're in traffic, on a walk, or sitting in your office thinking about what your next move could be, I need you to pause and lean in. Because what you're about to hear may potentially define how you lead, how you build, and how you execute strategies in your business. So let's get into it in this conversation. Welcome to the LIMBsimple podcast, Mrs. Ini Abimbola.
Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And you're so beautiful and radiant.
Thank you.
Okay. You. So to start our conversation, right, when I do read out her portfolio, you would be amazed. Probably ask me how I got the powerhouse and my chair, because she is a person that government and multinationals call when they need things to be done. But what I really want to know, Ma, is before TPC, before the ESGs, before the boardrooms, before this powerhouse that you have built yourself to be, who was Ini Abimbola? And what values have crafted you to the woman that you are right now?
Thank you, Kilichi. It's a pleasure and a delight to be here to have this conversation with you. Okay, who was Ini Abimbola? Ini Abimbola was a watch repairer's daughter, a roadside watch repairer's daughter, the first of 6 children to a very poor family who lived in a one-room apartment. Parents and 6 children in a one-room apartment, and grew up hungry most of the time. Understood lack from a very early age. And being the first child, had to learn very quickly to take on responsibilities. And so I started putting food on the table at 16. And that means I had to go and work to put food on the table. My dad was a roadside watch repairer. He didn't have a shop, so he had the small nylon bag that he carried around, repairing watches for people. How many people really were using watches then? So it wasn't like wristwatches. It was all those, grandfather clocks that people had in their homes.
The pendulums.
Those, that time. So sometime we lived in Badagry. So most times he had to cross, the ocean to the villages. And then when he works, those people don't have money to pay. So they will pay with, fish, crabs, anything that they have. And we had to wait for him to come back most times before we can eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the night. My mom was a petty trader. She used to sell in a market called the Balata Market in Badagry. And she used to sell very, those tiny bits of crayfish and pepper that altogether did not amount to anything, because 9 out of 10 times we were eating up the sales, and then she might have to go for weeks without money to buy another restock and all of that. So that was Ini Abimbola. That was how I grew up. Grew up being the girl with the worst school uniform in Badagry Girls' School. But then I think that from a very young age, there was this, I don't know whether to call it an anger but there was something that was, this isn't life, Why are we hungry all the time? Why is my school uniform the worst? We used to wear the sandals, rubber sandals that used to be called basket at that time. And mine had caught so badly because, I had to keep wearing it over a period of time. After some time, I had to attach extra a rope to the buckle area so that it could extend a bit. And at some point, the shoe repairer in front of Badagry Grammar School gate that used to repair student shoes, I took the shoes to him. He looked at me and looked at the shoe and stoned me with the shoe. Like, come on, get away from here. Oh. Which part of this shoe should I sew again? So I had to use safety pin to hold it, since he would not sew it anyways. So that was the Ini Abimbola that understood lack from a very early age, understood hunger. And I think that hunger was what drove me to the point of, this isn't life. I don't want to live like this. And I think it was just there. I mean, you wouldn't understand what it was, but I knew that I was really angry. But again, there was this part of my parents being very hardworking and also very focused on giving their children the life that they didn't have, even albeit they were also very poor. So there was this thing about, you have to go to school. So I became the senior prefect girl in Badagry Grammar School in Form 4. So when the Form 5 are leaving, while those ones are taking their exams, the Form 4 become the prefects. I was senior prefect girl in Form 4 and Form 5. In fact, I think I was the first senior prefect girl to serve 2 classes. And then, of course, it was so bad that when we were about to sit our final exams in Form 5, I think the fees were 75 naira, and my parents couldn't pay. And we were just about 25 or 30 students in the final class. And, of course, everybody had paid. And then our principal was a Ghanaian. And it was like, this thing is not complete. Who else? And say, but senior prefect girl has not paid. Now, everybody knew my dad in the market where he used to sit by the petrol station. So I couldn't lie that, my father was not around. So the school had to pay the 75 naira for me to sit my final exams. So that was the Ini Abimbola.
Now, who is Ini Abimbola now?
Who is Ini Abimbola? Ini Abimbola is a woman with a lot of grit and resilience, a woman who's been through crucible, both in my professional career and my personal life. I've had to win a lot of battles, fight a lot of battles and win and lose some. Actually. So Ini Abimbola is that woman that doesn't understand impossibilities, because for me, nothing is impossible. Ini Abimbola is that woman that never says never. There's always another opportunity to try it in another way. Ini Abimbola is that woman that is extremely loving, but some people will say also very hard. So I think that life has shaped me to be both amenable and forceful, very understanding, but I'd also sometimes being the person that gets things done. Because I grew up with that mindset that nobody's coming to save you. My father was the last born of 3 children. His own siblings were barely surviving. So I didn't have uncles to run to, both on my father's side and on my mother's side. So I grew up with this mind. There's nobody coming to save you. There's no uncle you're going to go and meet. So it's ride or die. You have to do it. And you have to get it done. Not just do it. It doesn't work. You give up. You have to try until you get it done. So that is the Ini Abimbola of today.
Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Now, what I want to do right now is to place the baby Ini Abimbola
and the present and the linkage.
Right, and then link it together. Right. Now, you did say earlier on that it was just something in you that made you have that resilience and determination. Like, this isn't what life should be. I'm made for more. I can do more. My question now is, there are a lot of other women, and inclusive, right, that, probably do not have it, better off than you did, because living conditions right now is reasonably a lot worse than it was back then, some of which even still stay in Badagry, because I strongly know that you would right now be a point of contact for a young girl right now in Badagry Grammar School that's probably having the same experience right, like you. I'd like you to quickly, from the depth of your heart, say something to them that if they had to hold on to, right, they could use that for the days when they feel like life isn't going to get better. I'm not going to go past Abara or Coco Michael. I'm never going to see the walls
Lagos,
of an airport.
as we used to call it.
They still call it right now. They still call it right now. They call it right now, right? I'd like you to talk briefly to her.
So what I would say to that young girl, and this is linking the young 13-year-old Ini Abimbola to the present Ini Abimbola, is that I think that the first thing is understanding that your background is not a definer, except you want it to define you. Your background is not the playbook or what I call the moonshot for your future. Your background is your background, which is like a starting point. So I like to give the example of athletes running the long distance race. Now, if you've not had experience, the problem is you start running
So
very
much momentum,
quickly.
right, and then you get tired.
And then by the time you're supposed to do the winning run, now you're tired. So that's how a lot of people see life. Look, why am I not winning at this point? Why is it like this for me? So I say to that young girl, at 13, the kind of girl that gets pregnant at 13 and her life ends because of the kind of environment that we lived in. It was very easy. My mom is out, my parents, I was the oldest. We're living in a face me, I face you. Thankfully, I know that sexual abuse was prevalent then as well, but not as bad as what we have now. So I could easily have been sexually abused. I was that young girl that honestly didn't have a hope. And when I say I started putting food on the table at 16, was simply from doing shorthand and typewriting, which we learned in secondary school.
Business studies?
Exactly. So that was what I used to go and work. And how much was the salary? It was 30 naira. It was 30 naira, but it was a lot of money then because it could put food on the table. My mom was happy, even though at that point in time, a 16-year-old were to do that today, people would be like, blimey, what do the parents think they're doing? But we see a lot of young people doing that now, selling on the streets and things like that. Because for me, by reason of being a missionary, a Jehovah's Witness missionary, had traveled around a bit. He had gone to Gambia. He had gone to Sierra Leone as a special pioneer, whatever they call those things. For him, he had had the privilege of seeing the world, what life looked differently. And he normally would say if he had an education, his life would have been different. Because he himself had left home when his mom died. He had been sent to go and live as a houseboy to somebody who used to repair watches. And that's how he learned. And that was it. He didn't go to school aside from, what they call standard 6 then. So he wanted something different. And I think that kind of helped because he kept saying it every time that I want your lives to be better. So I started very early thinking that indeed my life could be better, because even in Badagry Grammar School then we had, it's not like these days where the rich kids or the middle class kids go to private school. We all went to the same public school. The only difference was that they dropped them with a car in school. They had the fancy bags and fancy shoes. Their uniform were the same uniform, but you could see that there was, they were, what you guys call tush. There was a difference. So I normally would look forward to that. I remember this is always so funny. I remember one of the girls had gone on vacation. We didn't know what vacation was, and came back. And that was the first time I had seen Kit Kat. And she gave me Kit Kat. I have a fetish for Kit Kat till today. And she gave me Kit Kat. And I think that was one of the defining moments in my life. So she gave me this, she broke it and gave me. And I tasted this and I was like, my God, is this life? Is there anything in this one that is so...
I still like Kit Kat till now.
Is there anything in this one that is so sweet like this? And then it was so nice. So I asked her again. I said, give me some more. She said, oh, go away. You are beggy. And for whatever reason, that thing stuck in my mind. And I said, I will make money. And I will buy Kit Kat until Kit Kat cries. For whatever reason, the very first time I traveled out, Kit Kat suffered.
It's so shitty.
So to that young girl, I'm saying that I'm just sharing all of this to say to you that whatever it is you're experiencing right now, it's possible. I remember in Form 5, just about my final exams, that was when I started having eyesight issues. My parents were like, what kind of rich man problem are you having at this age? And it became so bad because I wasn't seeing the board. So we had gone to General Hospital, Badagry. And then was when they used to send these young doctors. And there was this young doctor there, Dr. Akinlade. I pray to God that he's still alive. I don't know where he is. And, did the test and all of that. I told my dad, okay, there's a place that they will give you the prescription. They will give her the glasses and all that. And it was, I think, 15 naira or some ridiculous amount of money. And my father was like, look, we don't have it. So we left. About maybe 3 weeks later, Badagry General Hospital did a medical tour to Badagry Grammar School. And the doctor said, I've seen you before. I said, yes, you didn't take the glasses. And my father said, we can't afford it. And this young doctor bought me my first glasses. I'm just saying that, where the Bible says, seest thou a man diligent in his ways, he will stand before kings and not mere men. And it is the truth of life. If you focus on just that little place you are, and I'm speaking to that young girl now, and know that this is not a playbook for your life. This is just a foundational beginning. This is testing your resilience. This is testing who you are. This is it's making you to ask yourself, can life be this better, and what would you do? I aced my exams. Then we had the privilege of writing foreign scholarship exams. Out of the 13 universities abroad that we all wrote the exams, I got 12 scholarships from 12 universities abroad. Out of that 12, 11 were half scholarships. Berea College was full scholarship, full. But then I didn't have passport photograph. I'm not talking of passports to travel. So I kept those admission letters till my 20s. I just kept them because they were like a buffer for me. They were like the push that I needed, that you will end up in one of the schools. You will go to this United States. I had no idea how that was going to happen, but I kept them because every time I saw them was a reminder that you haven't gotten where you're going. I remember I'm the first child of 6 children. So as I grew, I had to take care of the swans, there wasn't anybody going to take care of them. So that slowed me down a bit over the years. But at the end of the day, here we are.
I have goosebumps on my skin because that was a lot, right? But if there's anything that I took out from that, is that regardless of the story that was handed to us or the stories that we have met, it is our responsibility to write our own story.
And you can rewrite it.
You can rewrite it.
It's like watching a movie and saying, I didn't like why that guy died before the movie ended. You have a choice. Now, the problem is the discipline, the presence of mind, the not getting overwhelmed by, what kind of life is this? Why did my parents give me this kind of life? Not because some of us, I've had experience of meeting a lot of people who also didn't have a privileged background, and you see them complaining. If my father had done A, B, C, and D, perhaps our lives could have been better. But what are you doing to make sure that your life better? So I say to them that you can rewrite your story. It's a choice. You can recolor it. There's a way I see this painting. I don't like the colors. I can decide to paint on it with the colors that I like. And that's the way that I see it. I chose to repaint how my life was going to pan out.
So now, again, we're going through your story because I'd like us to tell your story up until your career and how everything, got to where it is right now. So you go through, you just said now that you couldn't get any of the scholarships because, did you get any of the scholarships?
None. I didn't. Well, I got all the scholarships, but I didn't take on anyone.
So then, how did you go through uni? Because I know that you're an Harvard alumni, right? So you did it.
I'm a Stanford fellow.
Oh, hello.
A 2008 Stanford fellow. I was a class governor.
Did you hear that? Thank you. So, back to that. How?
The connection.
Exactly.
How did
it's
it all
always
come
about
together?
it.
I think that for me, again, looking from where I'm coming from and just knowing that there was somewhere I was going. I didn't have a picture. It wasn't like there was somebody that I saw and I was looking like, okay, I want to be like this person. I didn't have that. We grew up at that time where we didn't even have television in our house. So it wasn't like I watched anybody to see. We didn't have television. The only thing we had was a transistor radio that my father, God help you that you touch that radio when he's not around. So he's the only one that listens to news. We don't know what is happening anywhere. So it wasn't like I had a picture. I didn't have a picture. The nearest picture were my teachers in secondary school. I remember my literature teacher, oh, wow. Just thinking about it now. I don't know if you remember this movie, Hostages?
No.
Okay, it's a very old movie, I think 1988 or 1984. My literature teacher, they were shooting in Badagry then, and, they were looking for a young girl to fit one of the roles, and my literature teacher had said, recommended me, and my father said, no, nothing like that.
I know that.
So I think maybe it would have been an accelerated run for me, but it didn't happen. So after secondary school, I had to keep working. Remember, I have 5 siblings to feed, and parents that weren't doing very well. So I didn't go to university like when everybody went to university. We wrote JAMB, we got admission and all of that, but there was no way I was going to go to university. University wasn't expensive, mind you, but the point was I was going to leave Badagry to Lagos, to town. Where will I stay? Who will pay the fees? Who will take care of me? So all of those things beyond the fact that there wasn't the money for any of that. Because then in Badagry, for us to come to Lagos was planning. Oh, you have to plan it. Yes. You have to plan for you to enter transport and come to Lagos, And Lagos started from mile 2. I hope you know that. So all of that was, a potpourri of a lot of issues. So I didn't go to school when all my mates were going to school. I started working from typewriting and shorthand. I got better, became secretary. Those secretary, I mean, the peak of my life, I was earning 300 naira, and that was a lot of money. I was earning 300 naira. I was a big girl type of thing. I was already taking care of my siblings and all of that. So I didn't go to school when everybody went to school. In fact, I didn't go to school until my early 20s. When I got married. I got married because the agreement between myself and the man was that he was going to send me to school. It wasn't like we're in love or anything. He was slightly older than I was. And so the agreement was that you will send me to school. And he's like, okay, I will send you to school. I went to school, I got married, and I went to school. And that was how I had a university education and having my children. And after having my children, was working, just life, like typical, the way that a woman's life is supposed to be, go to school, get married, have children, and that everything ends. So it was going, but again, that hunger was still there. It was muted for a long time, but it was still there. I wanted more. I needed. This wasn't the life I had envisaged for myself. So I think that over a period of time, I was now, my typewriting and shorthand skill had come in very helpful. And then I now went to a secretarial school properly to have a diploma in secretarial studies, which was my first certificate. By this time, my mates have finished university. So I had a diploma in secretarial studies, started working with that. Then my late ex-husband then had a job in Addis Ababa, and then we left for Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. Okay. So lived there as a diplomat's wife. I think it also opened up my eyes to a lot of opportunities. So there, I decided to go back to school. At that time, University of South Africa was doing, the online courses. You could do the exams in their embassy. So that was where I started from, doing all my exams, just to get a first degree, if you will. Then, let me piggyback a bit. So before leaving Nigeria, I had gone to University of Calabar, of course, to get a first degree in English language and literary studies. Okay. Again, following that trajectory of, secretarial studies, because I think when you do secretarial studies, next is to do English language and linguistics, but we called it literary studies at that time. So I had that first degree, but then it was like, more. This is not, I don't want to teach, there's still more. So again, by the time we traveled out, I was doing a law program with the University of South Africa, but I didn't finish it. I left it. I can't remember what happened, exigencies of life. Then moved on. The kids were living home and all of that. Then I came back to Nigeria in 2008. Okay. I think, and then got a job with LIMBs as executive secretary. Was there for 2 years, left in 2010 to start up Thesis Praxis Consulting, which was an idea that was very, eminent in my mind. Now, in 2008, I, by reason of some of the work I had done while in Addis Ababa. So while in Addis Ababa, I had worked as a consultant with the African Union Women and Gender Directorate, just helping the directorate in terms of putting together programs and things like that. So I began to define a focus, which was in public service or public sector, and really saying, okay, I think I like to work in this area. I think I have an idea around creating strategies for public reforms, doing a lot of work with the civil society to understand how things, worked and all of that. And while there, I'd also done quite a bit of work, working with a lot of the civil society organizations that were doing a lot of work with the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, all in Addis Ababa. So altogether, I spent about 10 years in Addis Ababa, working as a consultant and all of that. So by the time I came back to Nigeria in 2008 was when I left for Stanford, which it was a fellowship on the rule of law and democracy. And I was the only Nigerian woman in that group who was not an ex-politician or a parliamentarian. Every other person in my class was a parliamentarian or former politician or former political office holder. and had some experience in the legislature and things like that. But it was a fantastic experience for me coming through to say, oh, it is possible. It is possible, It might look impossible. Life might not. It might take donkey years. But it is possible if you just don't give up. Someone will say, it's because, no, I didn't have anybody. It was me just focused on one thing. I needed to be greater than my parents. I needed to change the story of my life. I needed to change the story of my siblings because, again, for so many years, you as a firstborn, you carry that responsibility over the years. So I'm just trying to, make that linkage and that connection. So in 2010, after coming back from Stanford, I started Desert Praxis Consulting. And the idea was because while in Stanford, I had seen how the organizations or corporations there, Hewlett Packard, Facebook, which is now Meta, all the organizations there in the Silicon Valley were supporting community efforts in making sure that their communities looked in a certain way. So there's a highway called the Monterey Bay Highway, where it's a very long road. But the road is divided in such a way that Hewlett Packard can take maybe 30 kilometers and they're responsible for that part of the road. They make sure that the asphalt is okay. They make sure that the green area is fine, everything. And then the next 30 kilometers or 10 kilometers or 20 is by another company. So I began to ask questions. So as fellows, we went to visit all of this because then it was during that Obama's campaign period. And most of the people that were working with Obama were professors from our department in Stanford. So somehow we got involved with going to visit the campaign offices, listening in on their campaigns, because remember, we were fellows on rule of law and democracy, and we just wanted to understand, how the American democracy worked. So just kind of, I think it also polished my idea around governance and public sector reforms, if you will, and the building of institutions, which I am very passionate about. Not just private sector institutions, but particularly public sector institutions, and how we can change how our country, things work in our country. So again, those experiences, then of course came back, again consulting, did some work with the Kofi Annan Peace Building Institute in terms of rehabilitating of ex-child soldiers from the Sierra Leone and Liberian War. That also gave me another perspective in some way in terms of how things that we take for granted can actually turn around very quickly. Because you saw young children as young as 6, 8 who had killed people and needed to be rehabilitated because they were not mentally okay. So every single step of this journey has made who I am, both internally and externally, both professionally and as a human being. So a lot of people will say to you, I'm very strict and no nonsense. But I think that also comes from having to discipline and train myself. I always said I trained myself because I didn't have a childhood. I didn't have the privilege of having a childhood. Sometimes I want to be a child, and I'm grateful that I'm married to the most amazing man who allows me to be a baby sometimes, because I think that's also a trauma that I carry. The fact that most times I think I was never a child. I don't understand what it meant to be a child, to be taken care of, to be bought toys.
So you're soft girl era
you know
now.
what I mean? So I think each of those journey, steps in this journey has shaped who I am.
I mean, talking about shaping things and fixing things, you're called Madam Fixer. And this is because you have led, strategy and institutional reforms across, like you've already mentioned, Africa, a lot of African countries, from public institutions to private sectors and, in the developmental space. Now, my question now is, you've also said that you can be strict and you can be really sweet. So when they call you Madam Fixer, what exactly are you fixing?
So that name, Madam Fixer,
How did it come?
Yes, it came from my friends.
Okay.
And it just became a very funny way. It came in a very funny way. So there's this thing about, you're looking for the phone number of somebody, ask Ini. You're trying to get Kelechi to go somewhere, Ask Ini. Oh, we've been trying to get this paint, we've looked the whole of Lagos. Have you asked Ini? She always knows how to get these things. You want, so there's this funny story that actually cemented that name, and that's where the day is like, our Madam Fixer. To a friend of ours, her mom was having her 60th or 70th birthday, I can't remember exactly. And, they had set up their table. Every of the children had set up their table. So my friend's table was really nice because, we are the Tush girls. So we had done our own part very nicely. So by the time we went to change and come back now, some aunties, big aunties had sat on our table. So everybody was now gathered together and said, who is going to go and tell them to stand up now? You have to find a way to go and tell them. I said, why me? I said, but you are the Madam Fixer now. You always fix things, get things done, go and sort it out. So I went there, very sweet on the women, told them that, these chairs, there are some people that they gave money, to help. They said, but we've made some tables, so I took them to another place that they will sit. And everybody was like, what did you say to them? I said, maybe people said I will sort it out. I've sorted it out. So that's how it came. So it comes from, I don't take no for an answer. Impossibility is not a word for me. It is possible. I live it every day that it is possible. I say to people that I don't know what it is, except something that the Almighty has said it will not happen. But if it is to happen, there's always a way around it. There's always a way around getting things done. There's always a way around fixing things. So I hold that very dearly, that I don't give up on things very easily. And I get things done. I think that's where the name came from.
Okay, so I feel like in my generation, they will say you're the plug.
Kind of. That's the word.
Okay, so a couple of things I would like to know is, what are the toughest systems or organizational reforms that, over the course of your career, you've had to effect?
Quite a number. I think that one of the biggest issue, and I had to use myself as a guinea pig over the years. One of the toughest issue is with entrepreneurs who have founded their businesses. So you're the visionary of this business. You had the idea. You put in your money. You build it from the ground up. It is very, very difficult to get those people to accept a change of strategy. It is very difficult to get them to see another person's point of view. And so maybe a mid-level manager is saying to them, Oga, I think that we can change direction. It is always, who are you? I started this business before you were born. I know what I suffered to get it to. So if I've grown it to this stage, what makes you think I don't have the sense to take it to the next level? So I think that those are some of the toughest people that I've had to work with. And then within the public sector, it's always this mindset of this is the way we've always done things. So it's always very difficult to change that mindset. I think it's not a Nigerian thing. It's common everywhere. But the Nigerian aspect of it is our stubbornness and our unwillingness to collaborate. I think that one of the biggest problems we have in Nigeria is that Nigerians don't know how to collaborate. We've seen a lot of collaborations happening, whether it's in the entertainment industry, whether it's even in businesses. But we truly don't know. We know how to compete. We struggle to collaborate. And when you see organizations that have grown, we always say to them, the strategy is about collaborating. The strategy is that you don't know everything, no matter how fantastic you are. You need to have the idea of some other person. And for organizations that are built by a founder to grow, you also need to be able to bring on other ideas, other people on board. So I would say that that's been one of my toughest experiences, how to get entrepreneurs, founders of businesses over the years. And what I did was, when Thesa Praxis turned 10, in fact, I was supposed to step down by year 7. I kept telling my team I was going to step down at year 10. I'd groomed 2 successors, So by year 7, one of the successors said she was leaving the company. So that kind of slowed down everything. So I had to stay back till year 10. And somehow the other second successor also left. So I now had to bring in an outsider. But I knew that at year 10, it doesn't matter how much I did, it doesn't matter how much I knew at the starting point of the business. I needed to step aside. And so I used myself as the guinea to say to founders that at some point you need to step aside. If you want it to grow into a legacy for yourself, you need to bring on people that will do better, understand the new trends of things. I'm willing to take more risk. A lot of founders are risk averse. They're afraid. And it's this idea of we've always done it this way and it's always worked. But I say to people, if you want to go global, you must change the way that you lead as a leader. You want to look at, the different ways that organizations that have scaled, organizations that have grown, have been able to build differently and be able to take those lessons and use them. But it's always difficult. It's easier said than done.
This particular conversation, I had it with Mr. Ogochukwu Omagu today, and he highlighted, and alongside Ezekiel Shelesi, right? And it's just quite funny because apparently this seems to be what a lot of the businesses in the country, and I think, mind me say, in Africa, are currently experiencing. It's the fear of letting go of what would be my own concept.
Yes.
And so my question then would be, you talked about collaboration. And I'd like to talk to businesses in the country right now that have the potential to collaborate. What factors would you suggest that they look out to confirm that this collaboration between XYZ company would get the business to maybe increase your revenue if that's what the collaboration is for, or maybe increase
your presence,
your presence
across countries. Yeah.
So what would you say that they should primarily look out for before cementing their collaboration?
I think basically it's always a matter of what you bring to the table and what this other person brings to the table. So there's a gap in your strategy or in your business that is required to take you to the next level, and there's also a gap here. So it's a mix and match, if you know what I mean. It's being able to fill that gap, and then what you have becomes a whole, and understanding that this other person's brings, or this other organization brings that will fill the gap that you need. So could it be regional experience that you're looking for and you are still in the Nigerian market? Could it be cultural innovation and all of that? So take, for instance, I like to talk about, when I talk to leaders around wanting to strategically move to the next level. You take an organization like Netflix that has what they call take responsibility thing within it's like a theme within their organization. And what that means is that different countries can take decisions that fit in with the cultural nuances of that particular country. You understand? And that's why you will find like Netflix coming to Nigeria and taking Nigerian movies.
Yes.
You understand what I mean? So top 10 in Nigeria today, right. While also showing the other global movies and all of that. So what that does is that they are able to look at the cultural fit and are willing to work with the organizations within that specific country or region. And that's what has blown Netflix, beyond their imagination. So it's being able to say, if I want to have a presence in Togo, for instance, I need to be able to understand French because they speak English and French. I don't have anybody on my team that understands French. What am I selling that is needed in Togo? And which company in Togo will I be able to collaborate with? Maybe by sharing office space, for instance. Maybe by being able to export what they need from Nigeria to Togo and also be able, I don't know, but what you need to do is to say, what gap can this collaboration fill for my organization and take us to the next level? And what gap can we fill? So you are now selling yourself, if you will, to a potential partner to collaborate. And then they are also being able to sell, to say, this is what we bring on board to be able to take your business to the next level.
I think one problem primarily then would be that businesses are so focused, hyper-focused on what it is for them that...
I think it's a founder's issue. It is very difficult, trust me, because I have started a business. It is very difficult to nurture a business from the teething stage where nobody believes in you. I started a service company. It was a consulting firm. We weren't selling products. We're selling a service that was not even common. We were selling a CSR consulting service. We were saying to private organizations, you should have a CSR strategy. It has a direct linkage to your bottom line. And they're like, what are you talking about? CSR is something we do when we feel like doing it, when we make profit. And here I am saying to them, no, it should be part of your business strategy. It has to be aligned because whatever you do as CSR links to your bottom line. And everybody's like, guy, I don't understand what you're talking about.
I'm not giving you my money.
Exactly. So where's the money? How will you make money? Let's even start from there. How will you make? So I know what it took, to sell this idea. I think someone said, look, you could either sell goods, you sell services, or you sell ideas. It is the most difficult thing to sell. Services are difficult to sell, but you see ideas.
Especially when the idea is not in its time.
Exactly. So by the time Thesis Praxis came of age, everybody was like, okay. Everybody started taking us seriously. That was when the KPMGs, the PwCs, the Arthur Anderson of those days began to say, okay,
you're onto something.
Who's this person? A lot of them knew me and honestly thought that, oh, it's a guy. And so when they meet me in person, the first thing you hear that, are you Ini? I was like, are you Thesis Praxis? I thought you were a guy. I'm like, okay, because only a guy can have ideas, type of thing. So I understand how difficult it can be. Taking the baby through that teething process, and then the baby starts crawling, and then starts working, and then can start running. And that's when you say that, no. I want to have 100% of 100%.
Ownership.
But what we're saying to entrepreneurs that we've seen over the years and that have worked, it is better to own 1% of something that will bring you $100 billion than 100% of something that you're struggling to make 10 million or 100 million naira. So that's always the way to think about it. But it is not easy. I can tell you that for free.
I mean, you said earlier on about building 2 staff members and building them to the capacity of taking over, and then one leaving, and then the other leaving over time, and then you. Now, look, that is the reality of a lot of businesses right now in the country. And people, a business is just as good as the people that run the business, and it's also just as good as the processes that that the system follows, right? So my question then would be, I know that business owners have it difficult, investing in the growth of their staff members, paying for trainings, paying for, conferences for them to get better at their job, sponsoring them outside the country for, courses and all of that. My question is, how do they strike the balance between growing their staff to the point where they can think like the business and ideate better for them, while also still maybe curtailing their fear of, growing somebody and the person gets too big and leaves the business?
See, for someone who's been through it, when people talk about, you have to put together a succession plan, and when you put together a very good succession plan, people will stay. It's easy to say. So for Thesis Praxis, for example, by reason of where I was coming from, I knew the difference that training my staff could make. I mean, these were people that anybody that knows Thesis Praxis will know these 2 people called the shots. I only took a final decision if I needed to take a final decision. They called the shots. Now, what I want everybody to understand is this. There is a mindset, and I can only speak for in the Nigerian market because this is where I've operated. There is a mindset that we have. We hear the motivational speakers say it. Why are you collecting salary? Your salary will something. You don't have to work for anybody. You can work for yourself. There's that mindset that we have, that you don't have to work for somebody for the rest of your life. You should go and own your own. So unfortunately, it is that mindset that every single employee comes to the workplace with. So no matter how much you train them, no matter how much you invest, if these people do not have what we call the intrapreneur mindset. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an owner inside another business. I mean, I gave equity shares. So I normally, when I talk about succession planning, I say to people, please tell me what else I could have done.
I could have done better.
I gave equity shares, and those people were willing to walk away because it is 1% of something. They want to own 100% of their own. So it will always be a challenge. It will always be a challenge. So I typically will say to leaders, do what you can as much as possible, because for the time being there with you, you are still gaining. You know, so don't look at it that if I train them tomorrow, they will leave. Of course, they will leave, you know, but the ones that will stay will stay. We've seen businesses, organizations that, you know, people have been with 20 years. So most of the young people today will tell you, we're not our parents. We cannot stay in one company for 20 years. And that's why you find you want to employ somebody, you see the CV, 1 year, here, another 1 year, and you know, and you're wondering, what exactly are you looking for? And for a lot of people, it could be like, oh, by the time I moved, my salary changed. For some other people, they will say to you, by the time I moved, the nomenclature of the job, so I went from officer to manager. It could be as simple as that. So the motivating factor for employees is different. So what I say to owners of businesses, entrepreneurs, managers, even when you're not the owner of the business, you see well-established organizations, people still jump around, is to do the best that you can. Train staff for the job that they're doing. Train them to be able to do much better than they are. Even when they leave, there is still that... what would I call it? Institutional memory that, well, you are the person that trained this person for wherever they are and whatever they're doing right now.
There's always probably going to be the sprinkle of gratitude that they have for you.
But it can be very difficult. I mean, I know one of the very painful lessons we had was one of our staff sent the person to Oxford for a program and, you know, paying pounds then. And the person comes back and resigns. So I got so upset, and I'm like, no, everybody has to sign a 2-year, if you go a binding agreement, if you go for a training, that's expensive, you're going to stay with the business for 2 years and all of that. But hey, people will still leave.
I mean, another thing I want to learn from your story would be, you did say that you had 2 possible successors, right? A question would be, in a system where there are managers that manage managers, and there are a couple of people that's got the potential to, you know, take up space and take up operations and all of that, what yardstick would you advise that be used? And I'm not talking primarily technicality or effectiveness or capacity or competence at the job. What other criterion would you say that business leaders would have to put at the forefront of their mind when making a decision on who should be or what type of team to build to carry on the succession of their business?
So from my experience, I'll say the first thing would be loyalty, not competence.
That one. Right.
So you hear a lot of young people today will say, I don't do loyalty. If you want loyalty, get a dog. I see that.
Very true.
Yes.
Very true.
And it's the bane of why a lot of young people are not successful. And when we talk about success, we're not talking about how much you have in the bank. We're talking about success in practically every facet of your life. So I would say loyalty. And in looking at loyalty, I would say also don't focus on. So one of the mistakes I made, and a lot of entrepreneurs and managers and business leaders make, is looking at the people at the top, looking at them for succession. I say that expand the funnel and expand the funnel down, down. Because we've seen a situation where a mere admin assistant grew through the ranks and was loyal to the business and became the driving force of the business. I mean, one of those people you will never look at. So we're looking at, oh, these are my top 5 people. These are my managers. These are the one I sent to Oxford. No. I think that understanding that irrespective of what it is that you do, employees have a choice to be able to decide what they want for themselves. But what I say to entrepreneurs or founders or business leaders is do what's right for your organization where it is at. Because that's what's most important. You're not going to say that because people are leaving, so you're not going to train them, or the possibility that people will leave. Do what is right for the organization at the point where you are.
I mean, this is great, but then it's taking me right now to wanting to have the conversation on sustainability, right? Because so then what would sustainability mean for businesses in Nigeria?
So I think that, again, we normally look at succession planning as one of the very strong pillars of sustainability for businesses. And it's always so interesting to talk about sustainability in the life of businesses and not as a concept that businesses should employ. When we talk about sustainability for businesses, it is in this idea that you're going to groom leaders within the organization that will be able to run with the vision that the organization had been built upon. But I think that vision can also still run, because it's like a founder starting up a business and thinking, oh, this is a family-owned business and my children are going to come and run. 9 out of 10 times, the children don't want to come back to Nigeria and they don't want to run that business. They're not interested in running that business. And so what most founders have done is that they've also brought in people that are external to the organizations, but that have an interest in that line or that vision. And you find out that they've had people that have run the business far better than even the successors would have done. And that's what happened in the case of Theatre Praxis. We had to employ an outsider who hadn't been with the business at all, and then groom the person over a period of time before I was able to hand over to the person. Of course, as a service business, the business has struggled since COVID. But again, the ability that I was able to step away from the business completely, from the day-to-day running of the business.
You still get emails, though?
Oh, I still do.
I know you let go of it.
Well, I sit as a director of the company, and so I still get some emails. And I still see the financials, but I am not involved in the day-to-day operations of the business, how they spend the money. When they seek my advice, of course, I think, oh, we've had this issue before. This was how we dealt with it, and this is how I think you should go with it. So I think that founders should be able to think about sustainability in terms of the fact that who is going to be able to run with the vision that I have created. Sustainability is also in terms of structure. Sustainability is not only in terms of personnel. It is really about the policies and the structure that you put in place. I say to people that Theatre Praxis is a plug and play, because I used it as a guinea pig of everything that I teach people around their organization. So we have policies around everything. I think a year before COVID-19 hit, we had a policy on remote work that I fought them hands down. What do you mean remote work? We work 2 days in the office, 3 days and not work 2 days. I don't understand. Where is that coming from? So we had a back and forth around. And I told them, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to approve it on the basis, and the approval, yes, we had the policy in place, but I told them we will only implement the part that was, in case you travel, you are still working, a type of thing. You can work remotely and things like that. But nobody knew that COVID-19 was going to come. So we had policies around everything that anybody could plug and play. You knew what to do. We had standard operating procedures. We had a track of emails, records that you could follow in terms of, how was this project delivered? How was this training delivered? Who were the facilitators? We had, you understand what I mean? So I say to business leaders, try as much as possible to build structure that is not around you. Because if you drop dead today, what happens to the business? It should be plug and play. So that is the sustainability that I try to, sell to business leaders.
I mean, I strongly believe, because like as a company, we also teach people that if the processes in your company cannot be replicated by another person,
Absolutely.
then there's nothing
Absolutely.
there. Because at the end of the day, you want to create a business that is able to thrive independently without the sole responsibility being on one person.
So I ask business leaders when I do trainings around building leaders and building leadership, what percentage of decision making depends on you? Anything above 10%, then you are still running the business
yourself.
In fact, 5%. You should every single year, you should reduce the percentage of decision making as you grow the business. In the early stages, that's okay because you're building something. But at some point when the business has grown, if you're running a 10-year-old business, that still depends on you, except of course the one-man business, then that's fine. But if you're running a business that you intend to grow globally or even regionally or even interstate, you understand, you want to have a branch in Lagos, Calabar, you can't have 40%, 50%, 70% of the decision making. You need to decentralize that. And that becomes very, very important. You see organizations like Google, you see organizations like FedEx and all of that. They have decentralized leadership. Because what it does is that people are able to take decisions that matter for the country, for the region. You can't have a country director that is waiting for you to say, yes, we need to go ahead before something is done.
And an opportunity just goes out
absolutely.
the window. So, I mean, we want to create a business that is able to thrive independently without the sole responsibility being on one person.
I ask business leaders when I do trainings around building leaders and building leadership, what percentage of decision making depends on you? Anything above 10%, then you are still running the business
yourself.
In fact, 5%. Every single year, you should reduce the percentage of decision making as you grow the business. In the early stages, that's okay because you're building something. But at some point when the business has grown, if you're running a 10-year-old business, that still depends on you, except of course the one-man business, then that's fine. But if you're running a business that you intend to grow globally or even regionally or even interstate, you understand, you want to have a branch in Lagos, Calabar, you can't have 40%, 50%, 70% of the decision making. You need to decentralize that. And that becomes very, very important. You see organizations like Google, you see organizations like FedEx and all of that. They have decentralized leadership. Because what it does is that people are able to take decisions that matter for the country, for the region. You can't have a country director that is waiting for you to say, yes, we need to go ahead before something is done.
And an opportunity just goes out
absolutely.
the window. So, I mean, we talked a lot about the importance of businesses realizing structure and procedure. But let's talk a little about strategy and execution. Because, I mean, we run the strategy factory, 10 hours, we give you so much information, almost even delude you into believing that your business is going to thrive. But then why I said delude is because at the end of the day, what really counts is if you make use of the information that you've gotten. So the question then would be, how are we supposed to, I mean, I'm talking consultants, executive, government officials. I personally feel a lot of these individuals fall short on the execution part. So what exactly and how would you advise, as maybe entrepreneurs first off, every other person right now that I mentioned can afford to get a consultant like you to consult for them. But an entrepreneur right now that is struggling between, I know what to do, I'm just struggling with execution. How do you say they bridge that gap?
I think for every single time we talk about strategy and execution is difficult. Execution feeds off of what is on ground.
Please talk to me about that.
So if, for instance, I have to fuel in the jerry can, that's my strategy. But I need to pour this fuel into the car, which is the organization. But I do not have a pipe to run it. I do not have a funnel for seamless pouring of the fuel
to the car.
There's going to be a problem.
Definitely.
Because half of the fuel
it's going to be wasted.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. So execution, 9 out of 10 times, it's unable to be fulfilled by reason of what it means, what strategy meets on ground. So when you hear leaders say culture eats strategy for breakfast, what is it saying to you? The culture of the organization, the way people do things, the way people align to do things, the policies of the organization, the business alignment of the organization, the way and manner we sell in the organization, the way and manner decisions are taken. So we want to execute a project, but as a team, we're asked to go and execute that project, but the leadership does not assign a budget, does not assign leadership capacity to take decisions on the spur of the moment, does not allow for the teams to run on their own and make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. So there's micromanagement, there's no money to run for every single step of the project. We have to come back to base to ask for approval. Do you see where the problems have been? And for execution, for every time there's a time lapse, you need to go back and see if something is missing that you need to redesign. And that's where you have the Scrum projects coming in. You have all of this project frameworks coming in. So I say that the reason why execution is a problem is really what it meets on ground. And that's why when we're feeding entrepreneurs or business leaders, as I like to call them, with strategy, is to say to them the first step is to do a gap analysis. What is the gap that exists that will
make this
impossible? Or will make this to only work to a half point and not get the impact and the result that we desire? So once you do a gap analysis, you already know where the problem is going to be in making sure that this strategy will be executed to the T. And you start from there and you begin to fill in those gaps. And then as you feed in the gaps, you're also executing, stage by stage as it goes. So strategy is beautiful. Strategy can be done for anybody, for any organization. But execution is always a problem.
The problem is?
I give you an example of the public sector. I don't know how many times you've had to redo your NIN, your NIN. That is a simple execution problem because there is a gap. And what is the gap? We do not have a cloud framework where because when you do your BVN, you're not supposed to come and be doing NIN
driver license
and then you do driver license, and then you want to register your SIM, and then you have to go through the same process. There is a gap. And so irrespective of what you want to do, JAMB, you have to register, you have to bring your NIN, you have to bring you're repeating the same process in 10 places. So until that gap is filled, it's still going to be the same thing. And we're still going to complain tomorrow because you want to go and do passport. It's still the same problem. Oh, your NIN does not match the way your name appears. Abimbola, Ini Abimbola, Laura, is not the way it appears on your passport. What's that? So you have to go back, correct it on the NIN or the BVN or something.
Swear an affidavit.
Just make the process as... I just had an experience that I'm still thinking of the right way to get it across. So I registered a new company and we just did our TIN. And here I am taking the TIN that was given to me to go and give to the organization that requires it. And they say to me, it's not validated. I'm like, okay, nice. I go online to validate the thing. They said there's nothing like that. I have to go to the FIRS office, get forms, fill it, go and look for stamp. Those holding those stamp it, and then, write letter on letterhead, and then take it back to the FIRS office. And they told me to take like 3 days because they have to upload it on the system. And I'm like,
all this process, first off, is redundant.
I don't understand. In the 22nd century, something that I should be able to do online in less than 5 minutes. So that is part of it. So there's a strategy to make sure that, we get techie, we're online, everything is done in the breath of the moment. But there are still gaps in the system.
We have to feel
that this strategy is not going to work.
Because, we find that when people hire consultants or specialists, they expect that you're just supposed to come in and do some form of miracle.
Exactly. So the first thing that I always, as a consultant, and that's why I say that sometimes organizations are looking for the cheap and cherry. So hey, there are consultants that you say, this is what I want. They'll come and do it for you and just walk away. So consultants like me will come in, and the first thing is we have to do a gap analysis. If you're not willing to pay for a gap analysis, there's no point. If we're working on a field project, we need to do a needs assessment. What is the need that you want to fill? What do the people want? I don't know if you understand.
Yes,
so a gap analysis in your organization will say you do not have the right kind of staff. You do not have policies in place. There's no decision framework. You are the be-all and end-all, alpha and omega
of your business.
Everything starts with you. So your team cannot play. There's nothing to plug. So they can't play. So until you do that, so a consultant like me will say, well, let's do the gap analysis and say what the problem is. It's not enough for you to say, come and give us a strategy. Come and help us with a strategy framework. Come and help us with defining a roadmap for our next 10 years growth. What currently exists? And why do you have a problem? Let's
face that first.
Once we're able to determine all of that, then the strategy is built around solving the gaps that exist and ensuring that they do not repeat themselves, and then you can be on the trajectory of growth.
This is beautiful. And I hope that a lot more companies that are looking to make and effect strategic growth in their businesses would be willing to first go to the grassroots and fix what the error is, and not keep thinking that you could jump from consultant to consultant. The problem is you, honey. Anyways, I'd like us to talk briefly about ESG, the ESG movement, right? And where Nigeria is positioned and how government organizations and business owners can, fit their business around that.
Okay, so ESG is environmental, social and governance framework. At its core, it's a corporate governance framework. And what it seeks to do is position organizations in such a way that they look at the environmental aspects of their business, the social aspects of their business, and the governance aspects of their business, and how all of it ties together. So the environmental part of it will say, how does your business affect the communities within which you operate,
environmental
the society in which you operate, and the environment within which you operate. So a lot of organizations will say, oh, but we are not an environmental organization. But you have generators that spew emissions into the air every day. Your staff all have cars and they drive, and all of those things are contributing, some in one way or the other to the environment. Environmental issues could go as much as issues around climate change, issues around waste management. How are you disposing your waste, even if it's just paper that you are, that is your waste in your organization. The social aspects will look at issues around community engagement. Will look at issues around human rights of your employees. We look at issues around the health and well-being of your employees. We look at issues around even issues like gender equality within the business. Do you have more men than women? So ESG is not just for big organizations, although it is more required for those big organizations because investors are really beginning to look at it. Now, on the other hand, a lot of people also see ESG as an investment framework. Yes. So those are the framework that investors look at. So even as a startup, you want investors to come into your business. You need to begin to look at the environmental aspect of your business. What part of our business requires us to look at climate change issues, for instance? How does it affect us? And where it does not directly affect us, how does it indirectly affect us? So on the social part, the community within which we do business, how do we relate with them? Is it a community that we're taking from and not giving back to? On the governance aspect would be, what are our accountability issues? Do we have a good reporting system? How do we, what is the gender equality on the board, for instance, or even within management? So it's at the heart of every business now, more than ever, to begin to look at those environmental, social, and governance issues. Because again, across the world, we're hearing issues. Yes, there's a bit of a play down on issues around DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're also looking at issues around, gender issues, very clear gender issues. We're looking at globally, not necessarily within the African continent, but we're seeing more and more of those issues because our governments are also going to borrow money from these people. So they are holding them, by the pin, to issues around the LGBTQ. So these are emerging issues that investors are beginning to say, what does this framework look like within your organization, and what are in place to take care of all of this? So ESG became, more pronounced, particularly after COVID-19, because a lot of businesses didn't have a business continuity plan for anything. Nobody knew anything like COVID-19 was going to happen that would shut down businesses for 4 months, shut down the whole world for 4 months. So the aftermath of that was, investors and organizations beginning to say, we need to put in business continuity plans that look at environmental issues like COVID-19, which will determine our enterprise risk management system. What kind of risk can you think about? So before, maybe people wouldn't think outside the box to say something like COVID-19 could happen. But now you will find that for a lot of organizations, their enterprise risk management system is now being adapted to such a case that even in the eventuality of a war, what does your business continuity look like? So people are now thinking of almost the impossible to say, if COVID-19 could happen and catch us all unawares, then what else could be in the offing? So that's what it is for businesses.
Thank you so much, Ma. It's an absolute pleasure to have had this conversation on air and off air. You are the sweetest of hearts.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. And if you're listening to this, and if you're building something, a company, a movement, you're a founder, if there's anything you want to take out of this, it's that at this point, maybe strategy isn't what you need. Maybe looking for something new isn't what you need. You need to go back into your business and identify what is making execution difficult for you. You want to fill up that gap so that when you get new direction, you already have a framework to make it easy to practicalize. Now, if we talk about her personal life, if there's anything I have learned, it's resilience. It's the mindset that determines the outcome of your life. It's the fact that it might take you just a little while, but if you're consistent, if you're determined, if you listen to the voice that propels you, just a little while longer, and it would make a full turn, and you'd see that, impossibility is possible. Literally, the word shows that it is possible. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And if you found this valuable, please share this, sit in with yourself, and I hope that as you build, you're building with the fortitude to execute, and you're building systems and procedures that helps you build a sustainable business that is scalable even to a global scale. Thank you so much and have a beautiful day.
What is the LIMBsimple story? It is not the story of high-ticket workshops held every month for 15 years. It is not the tale of massive halls, packed rooms, or the count of how many businesses we have worked with. No, the LIMBsimple story is deeper than that.
How can we know our limits if we don't attempt to exceed them?
It is a story of transformation, of becoming, of building with clarity, conviction, and community. It's the story of a farmer now hitting their first 1 billion naira, then 10 billion naira in revenue. It's the journey of an e-commerce dream, starting from scratch, now a force of 200 plus strong team, generating over 700 million naira every month. It's about a fish seller in the local market, crossing the 1 billion naira per month revenue threshold, not with magic, but with strategy that works. It's the rise of manufacturers exporting billions worth of goods to the world, and every month from Abuja to Benin, Osun to Ilorin, Lagos to London, Dubai, Qatar, Canada, they gather not just for knowledge, but for clarity, for community, for growth. We've seen real estate firms rise, built on integrity. We've built a trusted network where over 6.7 billion naira in business has passed between hands that trust each other. We've built businesses that don't just serve the CEO's dreams, but honor the ambitions of every staff member. This isn't about a guru telling you what to do. It's about walking with those who have been where you're going. It's about no fluff, simple strategies delivered by people who have walked the path. It's about 54 and counting businesses who've crossed their first or next billion naira with us. And once a year, in November, we gather at the LIMBsimple Strategy Growth Convention. We gather to learn, to connect, to sharpen each other, to share our stories and draw strength from the stories of others. We gather to be reminded of what's possible, to see what's working, to plan for what's next, to build better, smarter together. And yes, you can be a part of it. If your dream is bigger than your doubt, if your vision is clear, but your strategy needs clarity, if you know you're called to build something that outlives you, then this is your tribe. This is your time. This is LIMBsimple.